Potential violation of probation. 7 years after his conviction, a Jacksonville man connected to a high-profile church sex scandal is accused of being in contact with one of his victims, who's now an adult.
Authorities say 53-year-old Darrell Moore made the contact at the Greater Refuge Temple, the same place he originally committed inappropriate acts with victims when they were still minors. Well, Moore is the son-in-law of the pastor of that church, who was welcomed back. Well, News for Jax reporter Eric Avanier is joining us live now from the Duval County Courthouse to explain why this latest news is evoking emotions by Moore's supporters. Eric?
Yes, well, now that Moore is out of prison and on probation, he has every right to attend church, and the Greater Refuge Temple leaders have welcomed him back. Unfortunately, there was an incident in which he arrived at the church while the victim was also there, and that may have violated his probation. This, of course, now has his supporters and his critics sounding off.
I know the victims.
Shirley Roberts is the whistleblower who back in 2010 reported allegations of inappropriate behavior against Darrell Moore towards children inside Greater Refuge Temple. She's now a former church member and a retired state probation officer who is speaking out on behalf of one of Moore's victims.
The victim, based on the violation report, submitted a sworn affidavit stating that she did in fact come in contact with Darrell Moore on 3 different occasions. He wasn't aware, that she was in the actual facility of the church.
A longtime member of the church who did not want to be identified by name support Moore's presence at the church and says the victim was no longer a member when she showed up. She also says this was an unfortunate circumstance.
This was a fluke situation, and I think administration of the church and administration of his probation will get together and be able to work this out. When he does come to church, he sits in the back. He's just there for the word.
Moore's probation, which was dictated by the court, doesn't prevent him from attending church. However, it does prevent him from having contact or indirect contact with victims.
As a defendant, a convicted sex offender, he should have never attended a place of worship where he actually committed the offenses.
Back in December of 2010, Moore was arrested and originally charged with 4 counts of sexual battery and 3 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct. According to the original arrest warrant, he sexually assaulted and inappropriately touched 3 girls. The warrant states that one of the girls had been victimized inside the church, but the charges were later amended to only include 2 counts of lewd and lascivious conduct toward 2 girls, which Moore pled guilty to in October of 2012. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by 10 years of sex offender probation, but he was credited for time served, which meant he got out of prison much earlier. After Moore's release from incarceration, he returned to the church for services where he was welcomed by church leaders. But last month, an anonymous church member wrote this letter to the court in opposition of Moore being allowed to worship in the very same place he committed a sex crime. Now, Moore is expected to appear before a judge later this month. Depending upon what information comes out in court, the judge can either amend his probation, he could revoke his probation, or he may simply say that or rule that no probation violation has actually occurred. Reporting live from outside the Duval County Courthouse, Eric Avanier, Channel 4, the local station.
Eric, 7 years is a pretty good time. What does Moore have to say about all of this coming out now?
Right now, he's not saying anything. In fact, I showed up at his house, and the second he opened the door, he knew who I was. I introduced myself, and he just said no comment and closed the door. That simple.
Eric Avanier, live for us tonight. Thank you, Eric.